What is up, internet world? Brandon here with the Solutionary Experiment. This is episode number 1. Very first time trying to do this. Check it out. Here's what we're going to talk about, though. We're going to focus on solutions, not just problems. The whole world is filled with a bunch of people who can point out a lot of problems. That's super easy. What's more difficult is to try and find solutions. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I have all the solutions to all the problems at all. I can propose things, but I'm hoping that we can start a little dialogue. So whatever it is I'm saying, if you want to challenge me, if you agree, whatever, holler at me in the comments. Let's talk. First episode right out the gate, I'm coming out with a bang. Let's talk about the NFL and the National Negro Anthem. The NFL decided that they thought it would be a good idea to do some outreach and support Black people as we live in these crazy, volatile times by having, before week 1, every single game, the National Black Anthem be played before the national anthem, before the Star Spangled Banner. Now, there's been some outrage amongst some people. They feel like, well, that's reverse racism, or it's just racism in general. Why are you doing that? Now, I'm here to tell you, I don't think it's racist at all. I do think it's unnecessary. I think it's divisive. And I think there's a lot of Black people who don't even know what the National Black Anthem is. And if they do know what it is, they don't know all the lyrics. And I'm going to be honest with you, until I started doing some studying and researching for this right here, hell, I didn't know all the lyrics at all. And that's not to minimize the lyrics, because I think they're amazing. But I definitely don't view the lyrics as racist or divisive. But the action that the NFL is trying to take, I do find to be divisive, unnecessary, and actually a form of pandering, and something that I don't think most Black people even ask for. And when we actually talk about it, they don't want it. But we're going to talk about all that. So let's unpack what the National Black Anthem is. The anthem is actually a poem. The poem's actually called Lift Every Voice and Sing. It was written by James Weldon Johnson in 1900. His brother, J. Rosamond Johnson, set it to music in 1905. And for the first time, it was performed as a poem celebrating Abraham Lincoln's birthday. That was it. Now, you fast forward 14 years later, in 1919, the NAACP declared it the National Negro Anthem. Speaking of Negro, quick sidebar. On my birth certificate, I was born in the 70s. And I was born in California, not in South Carolina or Alabama or anything like that at all. One of the most progressive states in our union. In the 70s, my birth certificate for race, you guessed it, Negro is what is listed there. And by the time I was born, the term Negro was a thing of the past. We weren't talking like that anymore. I don't want to bore you guys into all that. We can talk about that a whole nother time, and whether or not it's appropriate to call Black people, or if they want to be called African American. But that, like I said, that's a subject of a whole nother story. So you may be asking yourself, where is this poem or this anthem even played? Where do people hear this? A lot of Black people, like, I've never even heard this anywhere. Depending on where you were born, where you were raised, where you went to school, whether or not you went to an HBCU or not, your church, different things like that, you may or may not have heard it. And you may be sitting here listening to me right now, amazed that no one even knows this, or at least that other Black people don't know this. But in actuality, there's a lot of Black people who don't know it. But let's unpack whether or not the song or the poem is racist. And let's actually unpack, before we get into the actual song, let's talk about what it actually means to be a racist. Because I think racist is one of these terms that we all kind of throw around a lot, way too freely. And to be honest with you, most of us don't even know what the word means at all. It's very easy. I almost feel it as a cop-out. It's very easy to say, instead of really doing analysis or really trying to help that person see, educate them and see the error of their ways, or just enlighten them to, a whole nother way of seeing and viewing things. we just immediately just dispose of that person to just say, oh, they're racist. Or if you're talking about something that actually is legitimately 100% racist, if you point that out, then you're viewed as being racist. Hell, you might be listening to this right now, and based upon me even talking about this, you might say that I'm racist. Fine, whatever. I'm not going to lose a whole lot of sleep over it. But I'm going to give you the textbook definition of racist. Not my definition at all. This is just good old Webster's. Prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against a person or people on the basis of their membership of a particular racial or ethnic group, typically one that is a minority or marginalized. The belief that different races possess distinct characteristics, abilities, or qualities, especially so as to distinguish them as inferior or superior to one another. So let's talk about lift every voice and sing, and discuss whether or not it makes Black people seem superior and everyone else or another group of people feel inferior. I'm going to read the lyrics here. Excuse me, I got old eyes, so I don't have my readers on. Lift every voice and sing, till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when we hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat, have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered, out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who has brought us thus far on the way, thou who has thy might, let us into the light. Keep us forever in the path, we pray, lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we meet thee. Least our hearts drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land. Doesn't say Black, doesn't say white. There's lots of talk of God, of our land, and in my mind, I think it's beautiful. I don't see anything about the lyrics of it to be divisive at all. Now let's talk about the Star Spangled Banner. There's some people who view that as being racist. I'm not going to get in the middle of that. You figure that out amongst yourselves. I think it's counterproductive to spend a whole lot of time trying to determine whether or not the Star Spangled Banner is racist or not. It's not going anywhere. I say that, but then there's a lot of statues and whatnot that are being torn down. That's a subject for a whole nother topic. I'm not even going to get into that as well. I do feel that that's counterproductive as well. Star Spangled Banner. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming? So I won't read the rest of the first stanza. We all know that. There's a third stanza, though, of the Star Spangled Banner that is never sung, that many of you probably have never heard at all, and a lot of people feel that it's problematic. And I will read it to you, and I'll let you be the judge as to whether or not it is racist, whether you feel it is problematic at all. Not saying that Lift Every Voice and Sing should replace it, but I just want you to listen to the lyrics of it. Third stanza. And where is the band who so vauntingly swore that the havoc of war and the battle's confusion, a home and a country should leave us no more? Their blood has washed out their foul footsteps' pollution. No refuge could save the hireling and slave from the terror of flight or the gloom of the grave, and the Star-Spangled Banner in triumph doth wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave. And I could go on and on, but mention slaves. And to me, not in exactly the brightest way. So let's get into the NFL now. So obviously the NFL thought that it was a good idea. I don't know who they talked to. I don't know if they talked to Terry Crews or who they talked to. They didn't talk to me. But who am I? They thought that by singing that would be a great way to have outreach and support the Black community. I'm here to tell you, we don't want it. Stop it. If you decided, you know what, we backtracked, we listened to Brandon, doesn't make a whole lot of sense for us to do that. Let's do something else. Cool. But again, I'm nobody. So the NFL, back in 2003, they adopted what was called the Rooney Rule, named after the late, great Pittsburgh Steelers owner, Dan Rooney, who at the time was the league's chairman of the diversity committee. And the rule basically said that for every head coaching vacancy that, when you were out interviewing for coaches, that you had to interview at least one minority candidate. Now, just like I do, if you force someone to do something, you're probably not going to get that great of a result. Now, right out the gate, it actually was working. But I'll kind of throw out some numbers here. So at the time when they did that, roughly 8% of the coaches in the league were minorities. Fast forward to 2017, that number jumped up to about 25%. And we hit our peak in 2011 with 27% of the coaches in the National Football League being either Black or Hispanic. And, you may ask yourself, well, who cares? But let's think about this. 59% of the players in the NFL, they're Black. 70% are non-white. Now, before you get all excited, that doesn't mean that I believe, Brandon, that then 59% of the coaches in the league should be Black and 70% of them should at least be Black or, Hispanic. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is that last year in 2019, that number dropped back down to 12.5%. So I don't think the Rooney Rule is working. You're trying to force people to basically, it's a form of affirmative action. And you're trying to force people to interview minority candidates. And I don't really think that that's necessarily the solution at all. I think that, Black people have to, and Latinos have to have an opportunity to have a seat at the table. And it's up to them once they have that seat at the table to prove whether or not they're the most qualified person for that position. Some of the greatest coaches of all time, whether it's Lombardi, Bill Walsh, Don Shula, even Bill Belichick. These are some of the greatest minds that the NFL has ever seen at all. But I think it's time for us to start giving minorities, an opportunity. But I think really the only way that's going to happen is by, I'll talk about that a little bit more. But I'm going to give you an example of something. If I've been having a side conversation with Beyonce about dating her, and you tell me that before I go out on a date with Beyonce, I have to entertain dating and having a discussion with Ariana Grande, I'm not really going to be interested. I've already got my mind set on Beyonce. That's not to say that Ariana Grande is not an attractive woman. Just not what I had my eyes set on. I'm already having side conversations with Beyonce. So I'll give you an example. The Miami Dolphins some years ago, they had their eyes set on Nick Saban. They had interviewed Mike Tomlin. They didn't hire Mike Tomlin. They ended up hiring Nick Saban because that's who they had their mindset on. That's who they had their side relationship. They already had an established relationship with him. So they had no interest really at the end of the day in hiring Mike Tomlin. However, what did come out of that, which was good, was that they communicated to the Pittsburgh Steelers, hey, we had a good conversation with Mike Tomlin. Seems like a really good guy. I think he'll be a great head coach. If when you're going through your search, give this guy a try. Well, guess what? They did, and we see how that worked out for the Miami Dolphins. Pittsburgh Steelers ended up getting Mike Tomlin, who is still there, who was still a great coach, got them to a Super Bowl. They won. And Nick Saban stuck around for a couple years, then he's gone. So that was a bad decision. And who knows how many other decisions like that have happened. But I don't want to just put this on the NFL either. A lot of the coaches that, get opportunities, they come from the college ranks. I think that the NCAA also has to take some responsibility in this and try and do something to reach out and have more minority candidates. I hate that word minority because it implies minor, and I don't feel minor at all. So I got to come up with something else. But at any rate, I also feel like, when you have former players, rather than trying to seek the limelight and be on TV as an analyst, like your Shannon Sharps and your Randy Mosses of the world and whatnot. And I don't want to get in these guys' pockets or and tell them what it is that they should be doing. But someone at some point, of that ilk, of that statue, should try and get into coaching. They've already had the built-in relationships. I know it's sexy to be on TV, but if you want to make a change, maybe you guys should try and get into – more of you should try and get into coaching. I know it is happening, but I think even more of you should. I'd also like to see, more of these players put together, groups, ownership groups, where they, start purchasing, small ownership shares of different teams. If you don't have a seat at the table, your voice is not going to be heard. You're not going to have an opportunity to tell your ownership partners, hey, go check out, XYZ. I used to play with this guy, and he's got a great mind. He was all, maybe he wasn't even a star player. A lot of your best coaches, they were trash on the field. They weren't that good. They're better than I would ever be. So these are sort of things that I think that we should be talking about. But also, Black coaches are given super short hooks. We're overrepresented on the list of coaches who are fired and never rehired. 30% of white coaches since 2000 have been fired and then had an opportunity to be rehired by another team. Contrast that to Black coaches, only 9% of them have been fired and then had an opportunity to be rehired. And obviously you have to look at some of that detail by detail, case by case, and see whether or not, any of them should have been rehired at all. But I would like to see owners give, similar fair leeway that you're giving to white coaches, give that same leeway to Black and Latino coaches, give them that same opportunity to grow and learn and to become the coach it is that it can be. Bill Belichick coached for the Cleveland Browns, and he did not do that great at all. Had he not had a chance to coach with the New England Patriots, we wouldn't be talking about them as probably the greatest dynasty in all of sports. So what are some things that the NFL can do to help? Because I certainly don't think that singing Lift Every Voice and Sing is the solution. I don't think it's going to help at all. If anything, it's actually making matters worse. The world's crazy right now. We're all talking about and doing different things, but I assure you, since they've announced this, once we get to week 1 of the season, whenever that's going to be, you're going to hear a lot of buzz if they continue to go down this path. So to the NFL, we appreciate the gesture. Thanks, but no thanks. Come up with something else. It's creating more division. It's not helping at all. What I would like to see the NFL do is, reach out to current and former players, coaches, you name it, owners, and reach out to law enforcement, reach out to local, political figures, to community leaders, and, let's try and figure something out. I certainly don't have all the answers, but I think if you get enough smart people in the room and they're really actually willing to listen, I think you can figure out some ways to not only help change the face, improve, improve those numbers. Let's get back to the 25, 27% of coaches being, people of color. And while you're at it, the NFL, I would love to see you. You're in all big cities. I would love to see you do even more outreach. I know you're doing a lot in your cities right now, but I would love to see even more in your communities to try and help. You're in a lot of big cities where there's a huge amount of crime, and I don't look for the NFL to solve all that at all. But let's talk about some of the cities that you are in, and let's see if there's some things it is that you can do to help. And I'm going to list right now cities with the highest crime rates in order, not the highest murder rates, because I know you're already thinking Chicago. Everybody always thinks that. Chicago is a poster child for violence and, everything that is wrong in America. And I'm not going to get into that. It is on the list. But here's the cities in order in terms of rankings, in terms of highest crime rates. This is as of 2017, so this is a little bit old. Detroit, Baltimore, Kansas City, Cleveland, Indianapolis, Nashville, New Orleans, Minneapolis, Chicago, and Houston. So NFL, players, coaches, owners, everybody, let's stop with the pandering. Let's stop with the foolishness. Let's try and figure out some real solutions. I don't want to hear the National Black Anthem before any games. And to be honest with you, most Black people don't want to hear it either. So check it out. If you agree with me or you hate everything it is I said, it's cool. Hit me up in the comments. Let's talk solutions. I don't want to do a whole lot of arguing at all. Anything you propose, let's keep it solution oriented. Peace.